Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Scott.
I'm Shatay, and we're the Hazes.
Welcome to the Love Haze podcast, where we believe that healing and wholeness are not destinations.
That's right. We believe they're a journey, y'all. And here on the Love Haze, we talk about how to navigate through it.
Yeah. So, we've all been taught that it's a good thing to give people the benefit of the doubt. It essentially assumes good intent.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to self-doubt,
Yeah.
that kind of changes up the game. Today, we want to unpack who benefits when we shrink or play small in situations.
Headline, it ain't us.
It ain't us. Welcome back to our Black Love Journey. Let's get right into this thing.
Yeah.
So, Mrs. Haze, set us up. Tell us how we arrived at this here subject.
I'm setting this up even though you found the video.
That's true.
But it really did stand out to me. I've said in a past episode that this year my intention was self-trust.
Mm-hmm.
And when I tell y'all that has been tested and stretched and revealed to me this entire year. Like, it's June and I don't want to use the language that I've been beat up around it, but I feel the stretch in terms of self-trust, and I'm excited about how much it is growing. I say all of that to say this video really hit home for me in light of self-trust. Someone on the internet, we can't even find the video anymore, was sitting in her car processing something a friend of hers told her.
Right.
I think in the video, if I remember correctly, she's talking about a work thing, it felt like. I could have just applied that to work, but she's talking about a situation where she was about to say, I gave them the benefit, and the friend says, you gave them the benefit of your doubt. And she was like, wait, what? It's like, you gave them the benefit of your self-doubt. That line alone right there, you gave them the benefit of your self-doubt. What does that mean? Immediately, I was like, we got to talk about that. we have to unpack it because I've never heard it framed in that way. What you said in our intro, we're always taught, we say, give them the benefit of the doubt.
Assume good intent.
Assume good intent. I think that is still the right way to go in terms of relationships and managing how you feel, things of that nature. But there is a situation where the other person intends to or not, they do reap the benefits of us playing small, second guessing ourselves. Maybe I'm not going to step forward and say this thing because I don't want to seem too And then what does that mean? Like, what do they reap from us doing that? So that's what we're talking about today. We have to unpack it. Let's start. Why do you think it is that we give other people more grace, or I guess in this situation, it's like more power than we give to ourselves?
For me, in my life, it has been, for the most part, because I think just assuming that good intent, just when we want to be in relationship with people, or when we are trying to navigate friendship, work relationships, all of those things, we always want to assume that people are coming with good intention, that they mean us well. And I think even through our therapeutic journey, through my individual therapeutic journey, it has caused me to be even more like, whatever it is, it's not about me. They're not trying to play me. And I'm more likely to assume the person means well, especially when dealing with other people who I don't know. And I don't know their intent. I just assume that they mean well. And I'm much, much harder on myself. Much, much more inclined to be like, now, you ain't have to do that. Now,
but then what about
better.
When it comes to like empowerment? Why do we empower other people and not empower ourselves?
I think we're just so used to being hard on ourselves. I don't have a great answer for that, but I think I just think we're so used to being hard on ourselves. Like, we call it being disciplined. We call it like keeping ourselves in line. We call it staying focused on our goals. We don't give ourselves a lot of wiggle room to make errors and make mistakes. So we're much harder on ourselves.
I think we're socialized too. I'm speaking from a perspective of a woman, especially. We are taught to present a certain way, be the nurturers, be the carers. Sort of, if you if you put your needs first in any major way, concentrated way, you are selfish. It's self-centered.
Mm, hmm.
Women aren't often given the permission to. I think about myself at work even how hard I tried to not present, to have to dispel the myth of the angry Black woman, even
Yeah.
though Black women have every right to be angry for so many reasons. But I can show up and be like, maybe hold your tongue at this part, talk the less, talk the least, but say the most, fix your
Hmm.
face, don't interrupt, right? Maybe I shouldn't stand firm on this thought because I could be wrong.
Hmm.
It all of these things, I think there's a amount of socialization that is the reason. The other thing that's coming to mind for me is I'm reading this book called The Big Leap by Gay
Hmm.
Hendricks, and he's talking about all the reasons that we sort of self sabotage. I don't know if the person in this video was necessarily talking about self sabotage like on purpose, but what self sabotage is on purpose, right? To that
Right.
point. And he said that there are four main reasons that people. I wish I had the book. Oh, I do have the book. Ah! Look at this! I didn't anticipate this. He said there are four main reasons that people sort of play small or self sabotage, and there are these underlying beliefs,
Hmm.
these limiting beliefs that hinder us. I can't remember the first one because it didn't. Okay. So here it is. Look at me remembering. First one is inherently we don't think that we're enough. There's
Hmm.
something that we picked up as a child that makes us feel like we're not enough. Second one is we are afraid of not belonging,
Hmm.
abandonment, which
I
is
remember us talking
definitely
about that. Hmm.
something that I deal with. So if I do too much, shine too much, then I won't fit in with this group. Third one is you're afraid of being a burden to somebody.
Right.
So maybe there's something you grew up and the story that he was telling is that his existence was a burden on his mother. Like she
Mm.
wasn't expecting it, she couldn't afford it already. She couldn't afford the first child. Now here he is, and it's problematic. I think it's a man. I don't know, but this person,
Hmm.
uh, and so any monochrome of success, like will this burden someone else?
Yeah.
And then the last one is outshining somebody. I think it's sort of it goes along with belonging in my opinion, but let me not do too much so I don't outshine
Yeah.
a sibling, a relative, or the person in this meeting, my
Hmm.
peer. Let me not outshine my boss. Let me just play small. But who it keeps us at a certain level and that someone else benefits from that. I know I just said a whole bunch, but anything
Yeah.
else?
Another part of it is I got two things.
Mm.
Another part of it is like when for me being an empath, sometimes I play small because one of the things that I have utter disdain for is when I present a situation and a person that I'm in conversation with finds a way to make it about them.
Oh, utter disdain?
Utter disdain.
Okay.
I hate it. I hate it a lot.
I didn't
So
realize you felt that strongly about that.
sometimes, you know, I struggle with being empathic and not being like, oh, I know exactly what you're saying. This is what happened to me, and then da 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 da. Da,"
Mhm.
right? It doesn't feel that empathic, so I give people the permission to like tell their story and not make it about me. And sometimes I think it's almost overcorrection, right?
Mhm.
I also identify with what you were saying about work, not from the standpoint, of course, of being a Black woman, but
Mhm.
in my field, like there's primarily women there,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm working as a male social worker in a primarily female field.
Yeah.
My department is filled with primarily women. And there is like a couple of weeks ago, had a disagreement with a supervisor, and I feel like I called her on her bullshit.
Mhm.
But the narrative was that I was disrespectful.
Mm,
And it wasn't about me calling out the thing. It became this disrespectful mansplainer,
mm,
you know? And those are the types of things that keep me quiet, that keep me not wanting to say things. And I remember even saying to you, like, I need to revisit. Like, was I just being disrespectful? Did I have a right to call that thing out? Or, was I wrong? And just playing over and over in my head, like, should I have just shrank? And I've spent a lot of times like letting things go
yeah,
in that department where I am, because you don't want to be the big bad black man that's cussing everybody out and telling people they ain't shit, and it's because you're a woman.
mm,
You don't want to be the person that's that person. So those are just two things that came to mind for me, and where there have been times where I have shrank, and to keep the peace or to not make it about me.
yeah. I mean, not to start talking about the work thing, but I've already said that was not what that was.
Yeah, I understand, but it's just how we do, right? We when there's doubt, when there's self doubt, that's kind of what self doubt looks like.
Yeah,
We turn the gun on ourselves,
yeah.
right? And be like, what did I do wrong in this situation? And I think more likely when we're dealing with other people, we're less likely to try to find blame in them. We're more likely to really give them the benefit of the doubt
Mhm,
and give ourselves the doubt, and they benefit from our doubt because
mhm,
we shrink back and we don't
mhm,
have the conversations that are
mhm,
necessary to be had, or we end up not getting our needs met, not saying the thing, and just
mhm,
continuing in these cycles.
mhm.
And sometimes we'll continue in those cycles until we finally fed up, and then we don't even deal with the person anymore
You just
you
fall
know
out
hmm
and it's beyond repair.
or people learn to experience you that way.
Mhm.
They learn that I can show up in this space and I can say anything to him, I can say anything to her, and they're not gonna say anything because they want to keep the peace. And
Pushover.
right, and they come to you guns blazing, and you be like, "Okay, it's cool."
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's just not what it is.
I just let it go.
Mhm.
Child, there's so many things that now that it's associated with this. It is self-doubt, avoidance, communication.
Mhm.
It's so many, it's very nuanced. I think the takeaway from the video that I got from it was that self-doubt is is dangerous.
Yeah.
It's not helpful to us. And the thing that's coming up for me in terms of why I think is dangerous is we keep it could feel cliche, but we say things like somebody needs your story, you're the answer to somebody's problem, we need all the things that we do to encourage people and lift them up and encourage them to go towards their purpose. It compromises all of that. When we doubt ourselves, not only does someone else benefit, like that possibly you could be benefiting in some realer way, but then it also keeps somebody else from what they need
Mhm.
in the realest way. So it's just no bueno. Like, what are your thoughts on like why self-doubt is? And I guess we could talk about whys and hows and where does it come from, but how has it shown up in your life? Maybe that's something we should talk about, how it shows up in our lives. That could be more helpful, I
In all the ways.
think.
I mean, I'm dealing with self doubt right now,
Mm,
in like a lot of different areas. I think how I've shown up in friendships, how I've shown up in relationships, and ultimately, I think it ended up being so tragic for me is because I would have the self doubt, give give people that benefit of my self doubt, and then still end up resenting them.
mm,
So there is still like there is causality, but then there is like what comes on the back end of that
mm,
self doubt, and we don't get to tell our story. We don't get to be the victim in the story if we didn't make a move or didn't say the thing or didn't, you know, give the relationship a chance to thrive because of our own self-doubt, because we didn't have the conversation, because we didn't give people an opportunity to meet us halfway in relationship.
mm,
And it's just proven to like kill a great deal of friendships, kill relationships, kill um, some future endeavors that I really think that I could have been great at just by doubting myself, by
Mm,
shrinking back. When I think about work stuff, I think about this whole worker bee kind of
mm,
thing. Some of that worker bee mentality has been because of self doubt. It
mm,
has been because of not trusting myself enough to like move on from a position that I'm in to entertain going into private practice. Um, the length of time that it took me to and it took us to start the podcast has been about self doubt. It has
mm,
been about like, what if they see that I'm not enough? Right?
mm,
What if they see that I'm imperfect?
mhm,
What if I get up here and I'm telling people about how to navigate relationships and then somebody sees me not navigating a relationship appropriately? Like it is this fear of being seen and being called out for
being
being a
human,
fraud.
for being human.
For in my self-doubting mind, it is being called out for being a fraud.
Mm,
And stepping into the wholeness of who I am, it is being called out for being human.
mm.
And that shit is scary.
That is the definition of imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Absolutely.
they will see me and will believe I'm not enough, but oh my goodness.
It will be my confirmation bias. Like,
Mm,
I knew.
come on,
I already knew you
therapist.
wasn't enough. There you go. Found you out.
Come on, therapist. You better
Yeah.
use what you can learn. But at least
Mm-hmm.
now you have the awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And then what the next thing is, what are you going to do with that information? And I think
Correct.
but you're doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
We're having the conversations anyways, and yeah, I think my self doubt. Not I think I know my self doubt. Has it changed a little bit? I'm trying to think if it's been consistently the same way for me. It's been it shows up in two main ways. One, it'll be I will make a decision and sometimes, a lot of times, feel like it's the right one. I know it's the right one. I felt what I needed to feel to make it. I'm moving
Mm-hmm.
in the direction, I'm moving forward. And my self doubt is like, incessantly asking, did I make the right decision after I've already made the decision? Just incess it is obnoxiously like, did I make the right decision? Should I
I'm
have
gonna
done
drink to that one too.
that? Should I have done that? I will over process with you and whoever else will listen.
That's why I'm drinking.
Should I have done that? Did I make the right decision? What if I should have? It's exhausting. There will be moments where I have very clear, like, I'm actually getting to that place now. Thank God for God and therapy and everything in between, where I am sitting and saying, okay, now I understand why I made that decision and why I'm feeling the way that I do. And also, irregardless, I haven't said that in a while.
I
Regardless
thought we was free. I thought we had made it. I thought we had made some progress. And
of
I'm talking to y'all. I'm not talking to her because I thought just when you thought somebody was healed,
I'm still
there
here.
you go.
I'm still here.
Irregardless.
Regardless of
Thank you,
if it
Jesus.
was the right or wrong or left or right, because some people say there is no right or wrong, it's just your choice.
Yeah.
I am now getting to a place where I can say, regardless of what happens next, I trust that I made the right decision and I can figure out what's next. My
Hmm.
therapist is always like, you stop trying to pre-solve problems. And that's essentially what keeps me
Hmm.
doubting myself. She asked me one time also, when did you stop trusting yourself? I still don't have an answer for that, but I do know that I often like I'm slower to make decisions. I'm not an
Hmm.
impulse buyer because I want to have all the facts. I want to make sure it's the right decision. It could have something to do with perfectionism. It could have something to do with the three
Hmm.
barriers that I identify with from this book. It could be all of that or none of that. But the point
Yeah.
is, I've historically been like, okay, I'm gonna make this decision. Was that right? Right. And then just nag myself about whether or not it was the right one. And then the other thing I'll do, sometimes I give a double whammy to myself. I'm like
Hmm.
really hard on myself. It'll be like I have a thought or something and it shows up in group settings and then at work too sometimes. And I'll be like, am I gonna say what I'm thinking? Especially if it's a thought that's counter to something
Hmm.
else, or if it's a new thought that hasn't been introduced yet. And so I'll have this thing and I'm sitting on it and I will either not say it and then somebody else will say the same thing, and I was thinking, like, dang,
Mhm.
I should have said it. Or I will say it, especially if no one responds to it right away. Let's say I
Mhm.
put it in the chat and there's like crickets on it. I'll be like, oh, should I have said that? Maybe I said the wrong thing. Should I have said that? You know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
just stay here, stay with your guards up. Don't say nothing. Don't be seen, to your point. Don't be judged. Don't be criticized. Don't
Yeah.
be seen as a human. And it can be kind of exhausting. And, it's real. It feeds my anxiety,
Yeah.
like majorly.
I think one of the things that I love about you though is, and that I honor about you. I know I'm gonna talk trash to you to the day I
And
die.
will, and will.
I'm gonna drink to you getting on my nerves and processing the things. But honestly, one of the things I love the most about you is that you will do the thing.
Mm.
Right? You will question yourself and beat me up when I'm trying to go to sleep about like, did I do the right thing? I don't know. What if God's trying to tell me that was the wrong choice? And I'll be like, girl, shut up. Because, and it's layers to it, right?
Mhm,
So where I am in my stage of change,
mhm,
it's somewhere around contemplative,
mhm.
somewhere around like thinking about making the change.
Yeah.
And when they make me mad enough at my job, be like, I'm leaving tomorrow, pull up my resume, and
Mhm,
then things calm down and I don't make a move. But you will pull the trigger,
mm,
right? You will give yourself permission to say the thing, to do the thing, to leave the position, to be like, my work is done here. I'm not fulfilled. Whatever it is, you give yourself permission to do the thing. Now, you may question it the whole way after you've done the thing, but, and I talk you off the ledge with doing that, but I frequently don't give myself permission to even do the thing.
mm,
And so I honor you in that way. And I admire you in that way. I trust your leadership um, as the boss in your work, but also what you bring to this relationship. Like, the podcast would have never had started if you hadn't been like, hey, I took your credit card and I went and bought the stuff. You're paying for a website that's $200 a year now, so it'll be recurring. So when it shows up, don't worry about it. I don't know that I would. I mean, I may have eventually got there, but you have like ushered me into some places that I don't know that I would have done for myself that helped me to be able to continue to take the steps after. So I really honor that about who you are as a person. And I think when I get frustrated with you, it is because like I don't think you understand how much that means for other people, like
mm.
to model that type of behavior. I think you had a colleague yesterday, like, send you this super long message about how much he admired, like, you, like, ushering him into this space. You usher a lot of people into spaces and into confidence and into grace for themselves. And then you turn around and don't have no grace for yourself.
So you're gonna have me crying on the
Eh.
episode? Nice.
So I be wanting you to like just lean into that and just know
Mm,
that, you need to be as good to yourself and know that you do that for other people. The way that you model that thing, it helps other people to see that they can do it too.
it was beautiful. Thank you, babe.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate
You
it.
gonna give me some?
I'm not even gonna edit that out. You know? Wow, thank you for that. That's
You're
beautiful.
welcome.
Get myself together. How am supposed to move
Please.
on from that?
Ask the next question.
We don't have one.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
It's
make you
like,
cry, baby.
no, that was beautiful. Thank you
Mm.
for that affirmation.
I
I
want you to
appreciate
stop
it.
doubting yourself. That's all.
Can we both do that?
We talking about you right now, though.
Oh,
This is what I do, by the way.
yeah. He
I'm a
does.
pattern for our life.
So what's the haze?
Um, it's not a difficult haze. It is like having to do the thing, like having to learn to give yourself grace first, and understand that as long as you play small, someone benefits from you playing small.
Yeah.
Someone benefits from your doubt. Um, and not only that, the world is missing something
Mhm.
when you doubt yourself.
Yeah.
There is work that we all have to do. I think that we all have like a divine assignment. I believe this podcast is a divine assignment. I
Yeah.
believe man to man is a divine assignment.
Mhm.
I believe the work that you're doing is a divine assignment. When your mentorship, the stuff that you do with AKA, the stuff that you do, like with your writing and the articles and all that kind of stuff, all that stuff is, those are divine assignments. But when we look at, where we were and the things that we had to go through to get us there, when we were in those places, when I was going through divorce, I didn't believe that was a part of divine assignment. When you couldn't get booked with Beyonce, you didn't believe that that was a part of a divine assignment.
Mhm.
But when we shrink back and tell ourselves that we don't need to tell our story,
Mhm.
um, we're not walking into what we're supposed to be doing.
Mm.
The things that we sometimes view as our failures, the being scared of um, being seen, it is just fear, and it
Mhm.
is not walking into everything that you're supposed to be doing when you've been called a greater. And when you've been called a greater, it is your job to just do the thing. The haze of it is just doing it and not being afraid to be seen
Mhm.
and letting people know, even through you doing it scared. It's been a long time since we talked about doing it scared, right? But doing it scared is a real thing. Like, yes, I am a little bit afraid that people will see me and see my humanity. But my hope at this point is that people will see me and see my humanity and know that they can also do the thing and be human
Mm.
and be imperfect and still have a story and still have information that people can use to help them get through. And it does not require perfection,
Mm.
right? It requires you to keep going, to keep running your race.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm over here thinking about, I agree with all of that. I'm thinking about also the language, giving someone the benefit of the doubt. And this was emphasized in that video too. Man, I wish we could find it so that we could share it. It wasn't like someone stole or connivingly took something from
Hmm.
us to make us
Hmm.
minimize ourselves. It was the act of minimizing ourselves. We are actually giving away our power. We are
Hmm.
giving someone else the edge. We are giving someone else the extra leverage when we play small in that way. And it's not about putting ourselves against other people. It
Right.
is about how you are setting yourself back. We're setting ourselves back. It is what
Hmm.
we're doing to ourselves in
Yeah.
that. And so I think I'm trying to get to to the haze is just the awareness of that. I agree it is doing the thing and caring enough also to say I don't want to, right, cause myself to harm or to not get what I need or to not be seen in the way I need to be seen, to advance, to not be heard, to not it's like another thing that comes up in this book is like the premise of we sort of sometimes participate in our struggle.
Yeah.
You've said that before
Hmm.
about like choosing to struggle. And when we play small, it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
We're we're creating these
Hmm.
circumstances that we actually don't have to be in
All right.
when we play small. I don't even know if I articulated it in Hayes well, but
Um, but we've talked in the past about like what therapy really does. And there was this misconception for me, I think, going into therapy that therapy was going to heal me. Like,
mm,
and I celebrate just being in therapy, and then get into that room with the therapist, and she started calling me on my bullshit, and I'd be mad at the therapist because you calling me on my bullshit. But you know, um, therapy really gives you self awareness, and we've
mhm.
said this before. It is your work for
Mhm,
what you do with the self awareness that you
mhm,
gain,
mhm.
because the therapist is like helping you figure out, like, when did you stop trusting yourself? Like you said,
Yeah,
like, what was the origin story? Like, what happened in your life that made you say, okay, I don't trust myself with this thing anymore? Or, okay, I need to doubt everything I do moving forward because I've made so many mistakes.
yeah,
You get that self awareness, and then it is our duty to make a different decision.
yeah,
Then, right, we can take that self awareness and say, I shrink back because of, and I know the origin story of why I shrink back. So I give myself permission to just be a person who shrinks back. But getting into therapy in the first place was like, I know I need to do something different. I need to do the work to uncover not only my why, right, but the how to do something different, right? The path to change, the path
Mhm.
to making a different decision.
Mhm.
And once you get self awareness, if you really want something different in your life, that thing not gonna stop nudging at you,
Mm-mm.
right? And that can be the haze, like knowing the information, knowing that you're capable of better, and still like,
That's it. That's my answer. What you just said. That's perfect. That was like spot on. Yes.
yeah. So I'm sitting with this self awareness. I know why I shrink back. I know why I play small, and then still choosing to play small.
Mhm.
Like that is the
Mhm.
haze,
Mhm.
because at some point, like there are no more excuses. Like at some point, you just got to do the thing,
Mhm.
right? And know that even in my self doubt, like this is going to be a part of my story.
Yeah.
There's going to be a point to where I get to this, and I'm like, we were on episode 63, 64 of the podcast, and I was still doubting them, whether or not we should keep doing this because we ain't got that many likes on Instagram.
And we're
I
spending
want
all this money on it, and it's
right.
like, but
I got my pool party clothes on already, and we over here filming before we got to leave. I don't want to do this. No one is watching.
It doesn't matter. It's for us.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. I have that self awareness to know that I have all of the ammunition I need to quit,
Mm.
which is what I would normally do. I
Mhm.
normally be like, "Forget this shit, cut these lights off. I'm about to put this on offer up, and I'm about to go kick it." But the self awareness is like somebody needs this information.
Yeah.
Like somebody is in this space, and it may be 3 years from now. I might find this on YouTube and be like, "That was exactly what I needed,"
Mhm.
and that has to be enough.
Yeah.
You know, it has to be that um I have to release myself from like this desire to go viral and
Yeah.
10,000 people see our message, and know that my divine assignment is maybe to impact change on a micro level,
Mhm.
which means this level that's immediately around me. It
Mhm.
may not be on a state or federal or international level. Maybe we'll get there, but it cannot be the thing that keeps me from doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Right? I can't worry about impact um, on whatever level as much as like the intent behind what it is that I'm doing. And my intent has always been the reason why this was born, the reason why we are here is because I didn't have the information when I needed it. And I've always wanted to be what I needed.
Yeah.
Right. And if I am being what I needed, then I don't do my job.
Mhm.
Right. And that has to be enough for me.
Mhm.
That has to be enough to keep me going and to keep us going. And yes, it's a haze
Yeah.
because it feels like so many other folk are having so much other impact that we can see. And it feels like we over here with 5 likes.
It's more than
Keep
5.
it going.
But yeah, I hear what you're saying and 1000%. And I think there's a thing just in response to what you're saying as we want immediate
Hmm.
feedback, immediate gratification.
Hmm.
And
That's the thing.
there is sometimes it's got to simmer right before it's
Hmm.
ready. Think about your oxtails, like you put them
Mm.
in right away. They're not. You got to let those things simmer for a little while. I think about the person that I'm gonna put on our music for the moment for today. She made this album in 2020. I'm just
Mm.
now putting it on repeat in 2023,
Amen.
right? So what
That's it.
happened in between that time? I've been thinking about to myself, like, I wonder if she felt like this was
Mm.
successful, or if she wanted to give up, and
Mm.
because it's so powerful for me now, and it's exactly what I need for my life right now.
We're gonna have to talk about that because my music for the moment is from an artist. So yeah, we'll
Mm,
get there. Yeah.
mhm, mhm. So navigating the haze of self-doubt, it has to be that we learn to trust ourselves more. And I'm trying to think of what I can say about how I've navigated finding my way to trust myself more. Child, it's been deep reflection, been deep processing. I've had to forgive myself for things. I've had to question myself, like, why won't you allow yourself to be human? Like, what is
Hmm.
this like
Hmm.
need to be perfect? And again, I believe it has to do with, you know, not wanting to be a burden on somebody else if I did the wrong
Mhm.
thing. It has been not wanting to be abandoned if I did the wrong thing. It is not wanting to outshine. Well, that probably doesn't apply, but it's definitely the burden and the abandonment part of it. So I've had to like reflect, pray, be in therapy, forgive myself, look at
Mhm.
myself. And it's not been linear. There have been moments where I've been like, yes, girl, you
Mhm.
doing that. And other times where I am so in my thoughts and in my head and telling myself a story about how I've made so many mistakes that I just want to cry and just like be in the
Yeah.
bed. Like, and so I've had to work myself out of that. I think one of the things that's been the hardest for me in this transition season of my life is I was even talking to our friend across the street about this. Like in all of my other seasons of my life, I feel like I heard very clearly the still small voice within God, spirit say, this is a move, do it.
Mhm.
And so then I did it. I did it. And then on the back end was like, should I have done that? Like question the whole thing.
Yeah.
This time in my life, I didn't feel like I heard that. And so it has really been a stretch in like, how much do you actually trust God? How
Yeah.
much do you really trust yourself to move without even being sure that, or being without hearing, have heard in the same way. And our friend was like, well, sometimes God changes up how he talks to you because of like what you need in the season.
Yeah.
And so you already have shown that you will listen when you get a nudging via
Mhm.
spirit. What is it that you need to be learning right now? It's like, dang, I actually am needing to learn how to trust,
Yeah.
like when I know other knowings, basically knowings in other ways. And so again, long-winded, how to navigate just learning to trust yourself more. It hasn't been easy for me, so I will not say that it's an easy thing to do, but it's practice. It's continuing to see myself, forgive myself, honor myself, give myself permission to show up in certain ways, see my humanity. If I get it wrong, try it again. Just like trust that I'm good in this moment and that I don't have to be perfect. And if somebody does judge me, that I'll be okay, that I'll figure out a way
Yeah.
to move forward. It's all of those things.
I think the thing that's coming to mind for me in the moment is, and I'm holding on to something that you said about like not want to be a burden, right?
Hmm.
So part of the unlearning for me is unlearning the thought that I would be a burden to someone,
Yeah.
because that's the support I've given to other people when they have, been in the midst of the consequences of some not so good decisions.
Hmm.
Um, if I've planted that, you know what I'm saying, then I'll reap it as well. So
Yeah.
even if this is not a great decision, I have planted enough seeds of like grace and of support and of whatever you need to be able to reap that if I get to that season as well. And to unlearn the idea that if I have a down season in my life, then it's somehow a burden to someone else.
Hmm.
Because I'm not doing it to get it back,
Yeah.
but I have sowed enough to be able to
Yeah.
reap the same if I need it. And having to give myself enough grace to be able to like ebb and flow and to err and correct and to make mistakes and have enough of a support system in my network to be able to fall on cotton, you know, to be able to know that I got referrals. The number of people that gave you leads and were concerned about you like getting a new gig and all that kind of stuff, and you hadn't lost no job.
Right.
You just want another opportunity.
Yeah.
But you had built relationships and people like, hell yeah, I got you. Like,
Yeah.
I know this, I know this, I know this person. Talk to this person, do this, do this. And you built that type of network through the way that you show up. When you sow into people in that way, the reap will always be there. Like you will always be able to see what you need. Your duty is to not see yourself as a burden in those seasons. Right. We have to do the unlearning part of that because that's how we show up and be mean to ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
That's how we show up and not give ourselves permission to even take the step to further doubt ourselves because in our mind, I don't have anybody to fall back on except me, right? When you
Mm.
really have all of this support, right? And you're telling yourself, I'm somehow a burden. when you freely give to other people and you don't make them feel like they're burdened. So why you do yourself like that?
This is to you as well, right?
Both, it's to
Yeah.
both of
Okay.
us.
Just wanted to make
No,
sure.
I'm not singling you out.
No.
It's definitely the way it is some of the unlearning that I am doing
Yeah.
to stop viewing myself as some type of handicap or, with
Yeah.
having some type of, it really is not enoughness.
Yeah. That's a powerful breakthrough. And it's literally the very thing I told myself this morning on my walk.
Mm.
Like, you know what? I can show up in spaces and be accepted for myself, even if I'm different. Because guess what? I make space for other people who are different from me to be included.
Mhm.
I can show up, right? So I was literally calling out the way that I show up in the world. And because I have sown that way, I'm trusting that when I go out into the world, that I will get that in return. And I wonder if I had the thought when I was walking too, like, I wonder if that's why I prefer intimate settings and like to be tucked away in the back. It feels safer to me because,
Mhm.
I'm afraid of being done to me. I don't know, just certain things. And I had the thought, like, well, why would that be done to you? Because you don't do other people that way.
Mhm.
And then guess what? If it is done to you, then that's a signal that those people are not for you.
Yeah.
And so either way, like, trust, you're secure, you're safe, you
Mhm.
can show up, you can be seen. And so literally had the very same revelation today. Come
All right.
on. Confirmation.
Yeah, it is.
We on the same page. This is some good stuff right here. I needed this processing in my life. So we talked about the haze. We
We've
talked about
really gotten into the biggest lesson that you've learned, but are there other thoughts that you have around like the biggest lesson that you've learned around self trust?
that, just like we say about therapy, like your relationship with yourself, it
Mm-hmm.
it feeds every other part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning that the relationship with myself, the trust is so much a huge part of that. So early parts of my therapeutic journey, it was about being able to see myself. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't even seeing myself.
Yeah.
I didn't even see her.
Yeah.
Now it's like I'm peeling back the layers. Not
Mm-hmm.
only am I seeing her, like, am I trusting her? Even
Yeah.
past versions that I thought I was making mistakes and I should have done things differently. I am now healing parts of like decisions that I made 15 years ago. And I'm like, you know what? Just now seeing, I understand what that was about. I understand. And I moved. And even though I've questioned myself this whole 15 years, I now understand, like, I do
Mm-hmm.
trust myself in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just that it matters so much. it impacts every part of your life because if I trust myself in a certain way, then I'm going to show up in our relationship differently, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to maybe have confidence in different areas. I'm going to show up to work differently. I'm going to, yeah, I'm just going to be different because there's a firmer, more secure foundation here
Yeah.
that hopefully will positively impact all of our world. What's a lesson for you?
Um, that little Scott is right there.
Mhm.
Um, and he needs some nudging.
Mm.
I think about like as little me, like not taking chances, how I learned not to trust the world,
Mhm.
how I learned to be so cautious, how the teachings that I got kept me from doing a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
And it shows up for me now. And like, even when I'm in my head and in my thoughts being like, don't do that. Like, it's little Scott, like scared to cross the street, little Scott,
Mhm.
and I'm having to tell him, like, I got you, bro.
Mhm.
Like, you're okay. We gonna do this. We're gonna
Mhm.
be fine. I'm looking out for you.
Yeah.
All right. So there is like the little us, right? Not the little us. I'm not gonna make it about anybody else. It is the little me
Mhm.
um, that has this fear of stepping out. Like,
Mm.
what if I lose this good government job and
Mm.
I lose insurance benefits for my family? I
Mm.
lose, like the steady income. Then how much of a man will I be if I do this other thing that requires a leap of faith that is not steady income? All of this stuff. There is this cautiousness that Little Scott just holds on tight to, and I call myself protecting Little Scott when
Mm,
Little Scott actually needs some nudging in this season, and
mhm,
his protection is from Big Scott saying we're gonna be all right,
mhm.
right? It is not giving myself permission to protect Little Scott. It is like to nudge him into like what he's supposed to be,
Yeah.
right, into this next season of what our story is going to be in, a part of. I was telling one of my veterans this week, when you own your story, right, you get to narrate the ending.
Yeah.
And I stole your Darren Greatly book,
Mhm.
and so he's been reading through it. So every one of our therapy session, he comes and he tells me some dynamic thing that he's read, and he was like, "Yeah, Mr. Hayes, I'm really like I'm sitting with that, because I've been ashamed of my story for so long." Da, 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 da. I was like, actually, I'm gonna have to reread this book again too, because we get
Yeah.
so used to the things that have happened to us, and that is our reference point
Yeah.
for every other decision that we make. And often when I look at the times that I've doubted myself, my reference point has been those times when it looked like a failure,
Yeah.
and it's been like, that's why you shouldn't do it,
Mhm.
and it is like, that's a part of my story. And I get to tell the ending. I get to decide how this ends and when it ends.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be that I quit, so I'm protected in that way. So biggest lesson I've learned around self-doubt is that, I don't have to continue to doubt. Like my divine calling is bigger than me quitting on myself.
Yeah. That's preach, brother. That's so good. I mean, I'm just thinking about everything that you say. You've also turned my book collection into a library.
Don't
So
do that. So if we're gonna tell the whole truth, my wife has books all over this house.
I love it.
And at least 2 times a week, there's an Amazon delivery with probably 2 more books. We don't have additional space for books. So sometimes I'm in therapy with some of my clients who are really like into the work. And I may have a book that I'm like, oh, I think I got that at the house. This would be a good read for you. I gave my client one book to borrow. I asked her for another book, and I think our neighbor asked her about a book. So that's 3 books. And she was like, this ain't no library over here. Like, it has 50,000 books in our house. And she wants to hoard the knowledge.
I don't want to hoard the knowledge. I just want to make sure they come back because I have loaned books out and not gotten them back, sir. And
Child, you gotta stop operating from your place of injury.
I love my books.
We love your books too.
Just like you like your hats. Like, how would you feel? Like, you cool with people just taking your hats and you running off?
You mean the ones that you wear when we go to
And put
concerts?
them back. Yes,
I'm
those.
just saying, you gotta trust people to bring it back. So
Yes. Anyways, I'm actually very, very grateful to have for the vet to be impacted by that book. And then we got like a for Philium bookmarks here too. And for him to just that was really and it really did make me shift my thinking about my book collection for the first time, to be if I'm being honest. I'm gonna talk ish just like you do. But for the first time I was like, oh, my books can like do more, you know?
amen.
Help other people. But I do want it back.
Going to get your book
There's
back,
notes
lady.
in there that I want to revisit and be like, when you open it up and you're like, oh yeah, that was good for that time. And I just like that.
Jesus.
Anyways. R.I.P. to all the books I done lost. They've been lent out and never made it back. I hope that y'all serving a greater purpose in the world.
What does this moment feel like now? What is our music?
I'm sure you could tell the music as many times as I played it this morning on repeat.
Good God.
Tony Jones. I think I've referenced her song Take Up Space, Sis before, but today I don't know why it was on my spirit. It just needed, I guess it was just where I was in my own, just processing my self-trust. Like I told you, I've been doing this whole year. This song, So Ugly, I'm Beautiful. Oh Lord, don't
Mhm.
even get me started about all the nuggets that are in there. But the premise of the song is that I have all these wounds from life.
Mhm.
I've had so many painful experiences. Like I'm so wounded, I'm beautiful. My lived experience has made me so beautiful. And I'm also unlearning and letting things go as well. There's
Yeah.
so many lines in there. And she's like, I'm standing in the ashes of my old self. Like I'm standing in the ashes of who I used to be. Or she'll say, like, I look in the mirror and I see you clearer. Or just so many moments.
Yeah.
Like I give myself permission to love and let go. Or, she's just talking about like mistakes that she's made and like reframing how she thinks about them and just owning her story and her
Yeah.
life and who she is and trusting her and shedding the pain and trusting your soul and oh my gosh, just oh goodness.
Shout
And
out to Tony
so
Jones.
shout out to you, sis.
She really is dope.
Just giving me all kinds of life through your affirmative songs. The album is called I See Me Mantras. And
Mm.
so every song sort of tackles a different thing. She's got one song called Currency that I really love. And it's about our energy, our vibe being currency and money. And that's how we can attract more abundance to ourselves. There's the mystery of there's just so many good songs about really just seeing yourself. And I know it's geared towards women, but I think everybody could get something
Mhm.
from just affirming themselves and seeing themselves in that way. So shout out again to her. You have a song you want to add or
Yeah. So mine is "Run" by Killer Mike. Um, Michael Render,
mm.
ladies and gentlemen,
Mm-hmm.
has a new album out called Michael,
Mm-hmm.
and it is an instant classic.
Mm.
This particular song, "Run," it has an intro by Dave Chappelle, and in which he says, "Being black in America is like being one of the people who stormed Normandy. You
Mm.
have an opportunity to see people around you falling as you all are storming the beach." And he compares it basically like reaching for your goals. But as people are falling around you and you see all this stuff, like there's an inkling in you that wants to stop, right? But our duty is to continue to run towards
Mm.
our goal. And he's basically, and when Killer Mike comes in, he basically says, his mama ain't raised no chump.
Mm.
His duty is to be running, and our duty is to be running towards what it is that we came here to accomplish. And we were talking a little while ago, and I was finna venture off. It was into thinking about like how long Killer Mike has been like underground,
Mhm,
and he's been on the scene for years and years and years. And
mhm.
I think this is his real like first 2023 breakout
Breakout.
album where he's like making appearances on the Breakfast Club, all these other places. Got Andre 3000 on a track. Nobody can get 3 stacks on something, but every song on that album is like so introspective, and it's so like he's been so committed to his work in the community, and it makes me think about the times that he probably wanted to quit. And this song in particular, "Just Run," that is the song for me because like no matter what's going on around me, like my duty is to run towards my objective. When I
Mm,
see people like failing around me, one of the things that's kept me in self-doubt for so long has been like other people that I would see fall,
mm,
preachers that I would see fall off, get caught up in some bull, get called out for not being who they post to be. All of those things made me want to stop. Because what if I've been scared for God to challenge me in that way, to
yeah,
challenge me with my stuff. And this song was really just about continuing to run, and everybody else will do what they do and have an opportunity to observe your success, but they will not have that opportunity if you quit.
yeah.
So shout out to Michael Render. You be
Shout
doing
out
that thing,
Killer
brother.
Mike. And it makes me think about as you were talking, I was thinking about all of the introspective albums that have come out lately. It
Hmm.
feels like a collective consciousness of our people is raising,
Hmm.
and that excites me beyond measure. You think about King
Grown man music.
King's
Uh-huh.
Disease
Hmm.
and what's Kendrick's album called that I love Mirrors. What's the name of the song? I mean, the album.
The album, I can't even think of it right
Mr.
now.
Morale, is that it?
Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers.
There are so many. I'm not trying to forget about the sisters, but those are the three that came to mind when you were just talking about his album. And I really hope that it has a ripple effect of having other people reflect on their own lives and themselves. Yes, to go and do, but also I hope people are thinking about life and how they're showing up and what they want to do differently, and understand that we have a choice in how our life looks. You know,
you can just hear the therapy in the music. Like, you can hear that people like have really like, these were the choices that I made, but it was important to my life because of. Like, even I think about Kendrick being like, yeah, I am a rapper, but I'm not your savior. You know, that type of thing. You know, united in grief. You know, all of these things, you know, he's just talking about the way he grew up, the injuries that he had, all of those things. Anyway, child, we'll be to talk all day
about music. We should have a whole episode. Let us know, y'all, in the comments or chat or email us. Should we just unpack a whole episode of like music and therapy? Therapy that's like music that I think there's a there. Anyways, thank y'all so much for listening. We have talked a long time today. It's been very therapeutic to me, and I hope it's helped you as well. I invite you to like, follow, subscribe, rate, review, all the things. Share it with family, a family member, a friend who you think would benefit from this episode, and hit us up. Let us know what you'd like us to unpack in future episodes. And like we always say, life is gonna life. Life will always present you with a haze, but you have everything that you need within you to navigate through it. Trust that.
And as always, you're not alone. Join us next time. We'll take this journey together. All right, y'all. Peace.